Today, we're going to dig into the story you've been hearing everywhere about the recent market chaos. We're going to peel back the layers of that narrative and see what the hard data is really telling us.
And that really is the question, isn't it? When you've got headlines screaming one thing, but the charts are kind of whispering something else entirely, you have to wonder, where's the truth? So let's get into it. Not too long ago, this was the drumbeat you heard everywhere. After all the geopolitical drama, the consensus was, this is it. A new bear market, a global recession on the way. Basically the worst case scenario. That was the story we were all sold. Okay, so first things first, let's really nail down what that prevailing narrative actually was. What's the story that most of the media has been pushing? Right, so according to this version of things, the conflict was a huge loss for the US and its allies. The story goes that Iran's Revolutionary Guard basically has a chokehold on the Strait of Hormuz, totally humbling their rivals in the Gulf. And the big winners in all this? China and Russia, who supposedly swooped in and used the chaos to boost their own power on the world stage. It's a really compelling story for sure. But what happens when you start looking at the facts and the little puzzle pieces just don't seem to fit? Let's look at some of the things that, well, just don't add up. Let's start with a really simple question. If Iran is in control and they're shutting down the Strait of Hormuz, who does that actually hurt the most? The answer might not be what you think. And here's where it gets weird. Contradiction number one. Iran's economy is an absolute wreck, and it's getting worse every single day that strait is disrupted. But on the flip side, the US economy isn't just fine, it's actually picking up speed. That kind of mismatch, well, it's a huge clue that something else is going on. So that brings us to the next thing that just completely blows up that whole recession narrative. You can forget everything the doom and gloom crowd was saying. The data we're seeing now, it paints a completely different picture. So this number, plus 1.6, this is the U.S. Economic Surprise Index. It just hit its highest point since last October. Now, this isn't just about the economy being good. This means the data is consistently beating what everyone expected. It's crushing expectations. And that's a sign of a really strong, accelerating economy, the exact opposite of what you'd see before a recession. Okay, here's another one that just doesn't make any sense. The official story says China is winning, right? But in reality, every single day the strait is blocked, China is getting hurt. Oil prices go up, and even worse, shipments of liquefied natural gas that they desperately need are getting blocked. And think about this for a second. A ship filled with essential natural gas, headed for China, was reportedly turned away by Iran's Revolutionary Guard. So why on earth would Iran block a shipment going to its supposed ally? This one incident just throws that whole simple us versus them story right out the window. It really makes you wonder who's actually calling the shots. So what if we're looking at this all wrong? The key point might be that this isn't the conflict we think it is. What if the fight we can all see is just a smokescreen for a much bigger, much more important battle happening right underneath the surface? This leads us to this idea of a pretext conflict. The theory is basically this. The US versus Iran tension is just the cover story. The real war is a quiet economic one between the US and China, and they're fighting over the things that will define this century: artificial intelligence and control over energy prices. All right, enough with the theories for a second. Let's turn to the one place that doesn't lie: the financial markets. Forget the headlines, forget the speculation. Let's see what the money is actually doing. Because the charts, they tell the real story. So remember, all the so-called experts were screaming that the recent dip in the market was it, the big one, the start of a new bear market. But when you actually look at the charts, man, you see a completely different reality. Take a look at the NYSE index. This represents the whole market, basically. After this massive run-up, that recent dip was, well, it was tiny. It was surprisingly shallow. It didn't even come close to the first major support level that analysts look for. I mean, this is not a market that's about to collapse. This is a market showing some serious underlying strength. And what about all that panic? Well, you can look at the VIX, which everyone calls the fear index. In a real crisis, this thing skyrockets way past 40. This time, it didn't even get close. So while the news was screaming panic, the professional traders, the people with real money on the line, were remarkably calm. And even if you look at big tech, the part of the market that got hit the hardest, it tells the exact same story. The sell-off wasn't a disaster. It was just a healthy correction. It fell and found strong support exactly where you'd expect it to in a healthy bull market. This looks like a market that's just taking a quick breather, not one that's gasping for air. And all of this brings us to one last and frankly pretty shocking point about who's actually winning in these markets. The answer is probably not who you think. So if I ask you to name the world's best stock traders, you'd probably think of some legendary hedge fund guy, right? Some iconic investor. But the data? The data points to a very, very different group of people. Believe it or not, the data consistently shows that some of the best stock traders on the planet are U.S. Congress people. I mean, their portfolios don't just beat the market, they absolutely crush it. You look at someone like Nancy Pelosi, her portfolio reportedly beat the S&P 500 by over 38%, or Ron Khanna, who more than doubled the index. These returns, they're not just good, they're absolutely extraordinary. And that brings us right back to where we started. What is the real story here? Because when you see performance like that, you just have to wonder, is the real story the one being told in the halls of power and not the one we're seeing on the news? What did they know that the rest of us don't? Now that's the question we should all be asking.